Jane Goodall, the woman who talked to chimpanzees. Hello and welcome to Beginner Bio Stories. Today, we will learn about Jane Goodall. She is a famous scientist. She studied chimpanzees in Africa. She changed how we think about animals. Jane Goodall was born in 1934. She lived in London, England. As a young girl, Jane loved animals. She dreamed of going to Africa. She wanted to study animals in the wild. Jane was very curious about animals. She watched them carefully. She asked many questions. Her mother supported her dreams. Her mother told her she could do anything she wanted. Chapter 1. A Girl Who Loved Animals. Jane Goodall was born on April 3, 1934. Her full name was Valerie Jane Morris Goodall. She lived in London with her family. Her father was Mortimer Herbert Morris Goodall. Her mother was Margaret Myfanwy Joseph. Jane had one sister named Judy. The two girls were very close. They played together every day. Jane always loved animals more than toys. When Jane was 1 year old, her father gave her a toy chimpanzee. The toy was named Jubilee. Jane loved this toy very much. She carried Jubilee everywhere. Some people thought the toy looked scary, but Jane was not afraid. Jane's family moved to Bournemouth when she was young. Bournemouth was a town by the sea. Jane loved living near the ocean. She could watch birds and see animals. Jane was a very curious child. She asked many questions about animals. She wanted to know how they lived. She wanted to know what they ate. She wanted to know how they talked to each other. When Jane was 4 years old, she did something very brave. She wanted to know how chickens laid eggs, so she hid in a chicken coop for hours. She waited and watched. Finally, she saw a hen lay an egg. Jane was so excited. Jane's mother was worried when Jane disappeared. But when Jane told her what she had seen, her mother was proud. Her mother said Jane was a natural scientist. Jane loved to read books about animals. Her favorite book was called The Story of Dr. Dolittle. This book was about a doctor who could talk to animals. Jane dreamed of talking to animals too. At school, Jane was a good student, but she was more interested in animals than in other subjects. She spent her free time watching birds and insects. She wrote notes about what she saw. Jane's teachers noticed her love for animals. They encouraged her to keep studying nature. They told her she had a special gift for understanding animals. Chapter 2. Dreams of Africa. When Jane was 10 years old, she read a book that changed her life. The book was called The Story of Dr. Dolittle in Africa. After reading this book, Jane decided she wanted to go to Africa. Jane told everyone about her dream. She said she would go to Africa and study animals. Some people laughed at her. They said a young girl could not go to Africa alone. They said it was too dangerous. But Jane's mother believed in her. Her mother said, "If you really want something, you work hard, you take advantage of opportunities, and you never give up. You will find a way." Jane never forgot these words. They became her guide for life. When Jane finished school, she wanted to go to university. but her family did not have enough money. In those days, not many girls went to university anyway. Jane was disappointed, but she did not give up her dream. Instead of university, Jane went to secretarial school. She learned to type and take notes. These skills would help her later. She worked as a secretary in London. Jane saved every penny she could. She wanted to have enough money to go to Africa. She worked hard and lived simply. She did not buy expensive clothes or go to fancy restaurants. In 1957, Jane got a letter from a friend. Her friend had moved to Kenya in Africa. The friend invited Jane to come visit. Jane was so excited. Her dream was finally coming true. Jane quit her job and used all her savings to buy a boat ticket to Africa. The journey took 3 weeks. Jane was seasick, but she did not care. She was going to Africa at last. When Jane arrived in Kenya, she was amazed. The animals were everywhere. She saw elephants, giraffes, and zebras. She had never seen so many wild animals before. Jane's friend introduced her to Dr. Louis Leakey. Dr. Leakey was a famous scientist. He studied early humans in Africa. He was looking for someone to study chimpanzees. Chapter 3: Meeting Dr. Leakey. Dr. Louis Leakey was impressed by Jane. He saw that she loved animals. He saw that she was curious and brave. He thought she would be perfect for studying chimpanzees. Dr. Leakey had an unusual idea. He thought that women might be better at studying animals than men. He thought women were more patient. He thought women were better at watching and waiting. Dr. Leakey did not care that Jane had no university degree. He thought this might actually be better. He said Jane's mind was not filled with other people's ideas. She could observe the chimpanzees with fresh eyes. Dr. Leakey offered Jane a job. He wanted her to go to Gom Stream National Park in Tanzania. This park was home to many chimpanzees. Jane would live in the forest and study the chimps. Jane was thrilled. This was exactly what she had dreamed of doing, but there was one problem. The government said Jane could not go alone. She needed someone to go with her. Jane's mother volunteered to go with her. Margaret Goodall was 63 years old, but she was still adventurous. She wanted to help her daughter achieve her dream. In July 1960, Jane and her mother arrived at Gom Stream. The forest was thick and green. There were strange sounds everywhere. Jane had never been in such a wild place. The local people helped Jane set up a camp. They taught her how to live in the forest. They showed her which plants were safe to eat. They warned her about dangerous animals. At first, the chimpanzees were afraid of Jane. When they saw her, they ran away. Jane was disappointed. How could she study animals that would not let her get close? But Jane was patient. Every day she went into the forest. She sat quietly and waited. She used binoculars to watch the chimps from far away. Slowly, the chimps got used to seeing her. Chapter 4: First Discoveries. After several months, something wonderful happened. A chimpanzee did not run away when he saw Jane. Jane named this chimp David Graybeard. He had white whiskers that reminded Jane of a gray beard. One day, Jane saw David Graybeard doing something amazing. He was using a piece of grass to get termites out of a termite hill. He had made the grass into a tool. This was a very important discovery. Before this, people thought only humans used tools. Jane's observation changed science forever. She sent a telegram to Dr. Leakey saying, "Now we must redefine tool, redefine man, or accept chimpanzees as beings into the community of man." Jane watched David Graybeard for hours. She saw him strip leaves off a twig to make it work better as a tool. This meant chimpanzees could not only use tools, but also make tools. Jane made many other discoveries. She saw that chimpanzees had different personalities. Some were brave, others were shy. Some were playful, others were serious. Each chimp was unique. Jane also discovered that chimpanzees lived in complex social groups. They had friends and enemies. They helped each other and sometimes fought. They showed emotions like happiness, sadness, and anger. Jane started giving names to the chimpanzees instead of numbers. Scientists usually gave animals numbers, like chimp-1 or chimp-2. But Jane gave them names like David Graybeard, Fifi, and Frodo. Some scientists criticized Jane for giving the chimps names. They said it was not scientific. But Jane believed that chimpanzees were individuals. Each one deserved a name. Jane spent hours watching the chimps eat. She learned what foods they liked. She saw them eat fruits, leaves, insects, and sometimes meat. She watched them hunt for small animals. Jane discovered that chimpanzees could live for more than 50 years. She saw mothers taking care of their babies for many years. Young chimps learned by watching their mothers. Chapter 5: Learning from the Chimps. As time passed, more chimpanzees accepted Jane. She learned to recognize each individual chimp. She learned their family relationships. She watched their babies grow up. Jane made friends with a female chimp named Fifi. Fifi was curious and playful. She often came close to Jane. Sometimes Fifi would even touch Jane's clothes or hair. Jane watched Fifi have babies. She saw how Fifi taught her young ones how to find food. She saw how Fifi protected her babies from danger. Jane learned that chimp mothers were very caring. Jane also met an old female chimp she named Flo. Flo was the mother of many chimps in the group. Jane watched Flo for years. She saw Flo get old and weak. When Flo died, Jane was very sad. Jane discovered that chimpanzees could show many emotions. She saw them hug when they were happy. She saw them comfort each other when they were sad. She saw them get angry and fight. Jane saw that chimpanzees had a dark side too. Sometimes they were violent. She watched groups of chimps fight against other groups. These fights could be very brutal. This discovery was hard for Jane. At first, she thought chimpanzees were always peaceful. But she learned that they could be aggressive, just like humans. Jane also discovered that chimpanzees could be very smart. She saw them solve problems. She watched them learn from each other. Young chimps copied what older chimps did. Jane spent more than 26 years living with the chimpanzees. She watched several generations of chimps grow up. She knew the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of the first chimps she met. During these years, Jane wrote many scientific papers. She shared her discoveries with the world. Scientists around the world became interested in her work. Chapter 6: Becoming a Voice for Animals. In the 1980s, Jane realized something terrible was happening. The forest around Guam was disappearing. People were cutting down trees. They needed wood for fuel and land for farming. Jane saw that the chimpanzees were in danger. Without the forest, they would have no place to live. Jane decided she had to do something to help. Jane began traveling around the world. She gave speeches about chimpanzees. She told people why it was important to protect forests. She became a voice for animals that could not speak for themselves. Jane founded the Jane Goodall Institute in 1977. This organization works to protect chimpanzees and their habitats. It also helps local communities find ways to live without destroying the forest. Jane realized that people needed help too. If local people were very poor, they might cut down forests to survive. Jane's organization began helping communities find other ways to make money. They taught people how to farm without cutting down trees. They helped people start small businesses. They provided education and health care. When people's lives improved, they were more willing to protect the forest. Jane also started a program called Roots and Shoots. This program teaches young people about the environment. It shows them how they can help protect animals and plants. Roots and Shoots started with just 12 students in Tanzania. Now it has groups in more than 60 countries. Millions of young people have learned to care for the environment through this program. Jane wrote many books about her experiences. Her most famous book is called In the Shadow of Man. This book tells the story of her early years with the chimpanzees. Jane also made television documentaries. These programs brought her work to millions of people around the world. Many people learned about chimpanzees for the first time through Jane's documentaries. Chapter 7: Recognition and Awards. Jane's work made her famous around the world. She received many awards and honors. But Jane always said the most important thing was helping the animals. In 1995, Jane was made a commander of the British Empire by Queen Elizabeth II. This is a very high honor in Britain. It showed how much people respected Jane's work. Jane received honorary degrees from many universities. Remember, Jane never went to university as a young woman. But her discoveries were so important that universities wanted to honor her. In 2002, Jane was appointed a United Nations Messenger of Peace. This meant she would travel the world speaking about environmental issues. She would help the UN promote peace and understanding. Jane has written more than 20 books. Some are scientific books about chimpanzees. Others are children's books that teach young people about animals and nature. Jane continues to travel about 300 days a year. Even though she is in her 90s, she still gives speeches and meets with world leaders. She never stops working to protect animals. Jane has met many famous people, including presidents and movie stars. But she says her favorite meetings are with children. She loves to see young people get excited about protecting animals. Jane believes that every person can make a difference. She often says, "What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make." Jane's work has inspired thousands of scientists. Many people have followed her example and studied animals in the wild. Her methods of research are still used today. Chapter 8: Lessons from a Lifetime. Jane Goodall has learned many important lessons during her long life. She has shared these lessons with people around the world. Jane learned that animals are much more like humans than people used to think. Chimpanzees have personalities, emotions, and intelligence. They use tools and solve problems. They care for their families and mourn their dead. Jane also learned that humans and animals are connected. We all share the same planet. If we destroy the homes of animals, we hurt ourselves too. We must learn to live together. Jane discovered that hope is very important. Even when things look bad, we must not give up. Small actions by many people can create big changes. Jane believes strongly in the power of young people. She has seen children and teenagers do amazing things to help animals and the environment. She says young people give her hope for the future. Jane teaches that we must think about the consequences of our actions. Every choice we make affects other living things. We should ask ourselves, how will my actions affect the world 7 generations from now? Jane also learned that local communities are the key to conservation. If we want to protect animals, we must help the people who live near them. When people have good lives, they are more likely to protect nature. Throughout her life, Jane has shown great courage. She went to Africa when few women traveled alone. She lived in the forest when it was dangerous. She spoke up for animals when few people listened. Jane's mother's words proved to be true. Jane worked hard, took advantage of opportunities, and never gave up. She found a way to achieve her dreams and help the world. Conclusion: Jane Goodall changed the way we think about animals. Before Jane, many people thought animals were just simple creatures. Jane showed us that animals have rich emotional lives and complex relationships. Jane proved that women could be great scientists. In her time, science was mostly a man's world. Jane opened doors for other women to follow their dreams in science. Jane also showed that we must care for the environment. She taught us that protecting animals means protecting their homes. She showed that humans and nature must work together. Today, Jane Goodall is one of the most famous scientists in the world. She has spent her life studying chimpanzees and protecting the environment. She continues to inspire people of all ages. Jane's story teaches us many important lessons. It shows us that we should follow our dreams, even when others say they are impossible. It teaches us to be patient and to never give up. Jane's work shows us that one person can make a huge difference. When Jane first went to Guam, chimpanzees were just animals to most people. Now, thanks to Jane, we know they are our closest relatives in the animal kingdom. Jane Goodall once said, "Only if we understand can we care. Only if we care will we help. Only if we help shall all be saved." These words remind us that knowledge leads to caring, and caring leads to action. Jane's legacy continues through the Jane Goodall Institute and Roots and Shoots. These organizations continue her work of protecting animals and teaching young people about conservation. At 90 years old, Jane still travels the world. She still gives speeches and meets with leaders. She never stops working to protect the animals she loves. Jane Goodall's life shows us that science is not just about studying things in laboratories. Real science means going out into the world and making discoveries. It means asking questions and looking for answers. Most importantly, Jane taught us that all living things deserve respect. Whether they are chimpanzees in Africa or birds in our backyard, all animals have value. They all have a right to live in peace. Jane Goodall started as a young woman with a dream. She had no university degree and very little money. But she had curiosity, patience, and determination. These qualities helped her change the world. Today, when we see chimpanzees, we remember Jane Goodall. We remember the woman who showed us that animals are our friends and neighbors on this planet. We remember the scientist who spent her life protecting those who cannot speak for themselves. Thank you for listening to the story of Jane Goodall. Remember her message: every person can make a difference. What difference will you make? How will you help protect the animals and environment of our beautiful world? Jane Goodall's dream came true, and her work continues. She showed us that with passion, patience, and perseverance, we can achieve anything. Most importantly, she taught us that we must use our abilities to help others and protect our planet for future generations.